Welcome everyone. My name is Mohammad Hassan Innovation Wala, and I am a student of Rehan School Lahore campus, level 1 student batch 4, and I am belong from Lahore, Pakistan. So this is my short introduction. So hello Miles and hello everyone.
Alaikum assalam. Great to see you back. I'm ready to dive in whenever you are. What's the special topic for today's session?
Okay, today's special topic is creating an innovation culture, build and creative and future ready innovation environment.
Creating an innovation culture, huh? That sounds like the big picture stuff, not just the tools, but the actual vibe of a company. I'm locked in. Where do you want to start?
Okay, first of all, we'll start with some basic questions. So my first question is, what is innovation culture?
Think of innovation culture as the DNA of a company. It's not just about having a suggestion box or a fancy office with bean bags. It's the shared set of values and beliefs that make people feel like it's actually their job to think differently. In a real innovation culture, curiosity isn't just welcomed, it's expected. People aren't afraid to ask, why do we do it this way? Or what if we tried this instead? Because the company actually rewards that kind of thinking instead of shutting it down. Basically, it's an environment where the team is more scared of staying the same than they are of trying something new. Like, does that click, or do you want me to break it down more?
Yes, it's click.
That is clicking. What's the next question on the list? It's important because it's the difference between a company that actually evolves and one that just waits for the world to pass them by. Without a culture of innovation, you've got people who are just following orders, which means you're only as good as the person at the top. But when the culture is right, you've got every single person in the building thinking about how to make things better. It basically turns your whole team into a powerhouse of ideas instead of just a group of employees. Ready to move on, or you want to dive deeper into that?
Okay, so we will move on our next question. Next question is, how does innovation?
It works by creating a safety net for your team. Instead of punishing mistakes, a company with an innovation culture treats them as data points. It's a cycle. The company encourages a wild idea, gives the team the space and resources to test it without fear of getting fired if it fails, and then they analyze what happened to make the next attempt better. It's basically moving from a do it this way because I said so vibe to a let's test this and see what happens mindset. Does that make sense, or you want an example of how that
No,
looks in a real
it's
company?
good.
Right on. What's next on the
Okay,
agenda?
so next question is, what are its main goals?
The main goals are usually about more than just making a new product. It's about building a mindset where the team is constantly looking for ways to improve. One big goal is continuous improvement, just making things a little bit better every single day. Then you've got agility, which is the ability to pivot quickly when the market changes. And honestly, one of the biggest goals is talent retention. People who are creative and smart don't want to work in a place where their ideas are ignored. They want to be in an environment where they can actually build things. You feeling that? Or you want to know how a company actually measures if they're hitting these goals?
Yes, explain.
Measuring this stuff is tricky because you can't just look at a spreadsheet and see innovation written there. Most companies look at things like the number of new ideas submitted by employees, how many of those actually make it to a prototype, and how quickly they can go from an idea to a real test. They also track failure rates, which sounds bad, but in this world, if you're not failing some of the time, it means you're not taking enough risks. They might also just look at employee engagement surveys to see if people actually feel like their voice matters. Does that make sense, or do you want to know what happens when a company tries to measure it the wrong way?
No, I have a next question. So next question is, what is creative culture?
Think of creative culture as the engine that powers the innovation culture we've been talking about. While innovation is often about the final result, the new product, or the better process, creative culture is all about the mindset. It's an environment where curiosity is a way of life and people are encouraged to connect dots that don't seem to relate. It's less about the solution and more about the exploration. In a creative culture, the goal isn't just to fix a problem, it's to imagine a version of the world that doesn't even exist yet. Does that click, or do you want to know the difference between being creative and being innovative?
Yes, it's click.
Glad it's clicking. What's the next question you got for the audience?
Okay. So next question is who needs innovation culture? Who needs innovation culture?
Honestly, everyone. It doesn't matter if it's a huge corporation or a small startup in a garage. If you're in a business where the world is changing, which is basically every business right now, you need a culture that can adapt. If you don't, you're just waiting for someone hungrier and more creative to come along and do it better. Want to know why some companies are too scared to actually build this kind of culture?
Okay.
It's usually because they're obsessed with control. They're terrified that if they give people the freedom to experiment, things will get messy or they'll lose a grip on how things are run. But the irony is, by trying to control everything to avoid mistakes, they actually create the biggest risk of all, becoming completely obsolete because they forgot how to evolve. You good with that, or you want to move on to the next question?
Move on our next question.
I'm ready. Hit me with it.
Okay, so my next question is what is innovation environment?
Think of the innovation environment as the physical and digital space where the culture actually lives. It's the difference between working in a gray cubicle where you're told to just keep your head down and a space designed for collaboration. This could be anything from an open plan office with whiteboards everywhere to the digital tools your team uses to brainstorm and share ideas. Basically, it's the actual setting that either encourages people to get creative or makes them feel like they're in a library. Does that make sense, or do you want to know how a simple change in the environment can totally flip the vibe of a team? Right on. What's the next move on your list?
Okay, so my next question is what mistakes beginners make?
The biggest mistake is thinking that you can just install a culture like it's a piece of software. Beginners often try to just change the perks, like adding a ping pong table or a colorful lounge, and think that's an innovation culture. But you can't buy a culture. If people are still terrified of getting yelled at for a mistake, those beanbags aren't going to make them any more creative. Another huge one is the
Okay,
top down trap. When a boss says, okay, everyone, be innovative starting Monday, but then shoots down every idea that isn't their own. That's not a culture, that's just a performance. Want to hear about the perfectionism trap that usually kills great ideas before they even get a chance to breathe? It's this thing where people think every idea has to be a masterpiece before it's shown to anyone. They spend months polishing a concept in private, only to find out at the end that it doesn't actually solve the problem. In a real innovation culture, you launch the ugly version, get the feedback, and fix it in public. Perfectionism is just a fancy word for being afraid to be wrong. You ready to move on, or you got another question for the audience?
yes, I have a next question for audience. So next question is what are key elements of innovation culture?
All right, got to look at a few non negotiables here. First is psychological safety. That's the big one. It's when people know they can take a risk or suggest a wild idea without being shamed if it doesn't work. Then you've got empowerment, which means giving people the actual authority to test their ideas instead of needing 5 signatures from management. And you can't forget curiosity, where asking what if is actually rewarded. Finally, there's cross pollination, which is just a fancy way of saying people from different departments actually talk to each other to find new angles. Does that cover the basics, or do you want me to dive into how to actually build one of those elements from scratch?
Okay, so
I'm with you.
yes, we will move on our next question. Next question is what is
Leadership is the heart of the whole thing. If the leaders don't walk the walk, the culture is just a lie. Their job isn't to have all the ideas, but to create the space where the ideas can actually happen. They have to be the ones who say, go ahead and try it, and if it fails, we'll figure out why together. They're essentially the shield that protects the team from the pressure to only do the safe thing. You want to know how to tell if a leader is actually supporting innovation or just pretending to? I'm locked in. You're on a
Okay.
roll.
Yes, yes. Okay, so we will move on our next question. Next question is, what is experimentation?
Experimentation is basically the heartbeat of an innovation culture. It's the process of taking a wild idea and turning it into a small, low risk test to see if it actually works. Instead of betting the whole company on one big guess, you run a bunch of tiny experiments. You try something, you measure the result, and then you decide whether to double down or scrap it. It's essentially turning the office into a lab where the goal isn't to be right the first time, but to learn as fast as possible. You want me to explain the difference between a pilot project and a quick and dirty experiment, or you're good?
Okay.
A pilot project is like the dress rehearsal. It's a more polished, small scale version of the real thing where you're testing if the whole system can actually handle the load. Quick and dirty experiment is more like a rough sketch. You just want to see if the core idea even works, so you do the bare minimum to get an answer. One is about proving it's scalable, the other is just about proving it's possible. You follow me, or you got another question on the list?
I have another question. So my next question is, what is teamwork important?
Teamwork is where the ideas actually get legs. In an innovation culture, nobody has the full picture on their own. You need the dreamer who sees the wild possibility and the doer who knows how to actually build it. You get people from different backgrounds colliding. You get these aha moments that would never happen if everyone just stayed in their own lane. Basically, it turns a bunch of individual smart people into a collective brain. Does that click? Or do you want to know why too much teamwork can actually kill a good idea?
Yes, it's click.
Glad it's clicking. What's next on the list for the audience?
Okay. So
I'm
so next question is, what is communication role? What is communication role?
Communication is the glue that holds the whole thing together. If you've got a brilliant idea, but you can't explain it in a way that makes people care, that idea just dies on the vine. It's not just about emails and meetings, it's about creating a flow where feedback moves fast and honestly without the filters. It's the difference between a team that's actually collaborating and a team that's just talking at each other. Want to know the difference between top down and bottom up communication? Or you're good to move on?
Okay, so we will move on our next question. Next question is, what is learning culture?
Learning culture is basically the foundation that everything else is built on. It's when a company stops treating mistakes as failures and starts treating them as tuition. In a regular office, if something goes wrong, people look for someone to blame. In a learning culture, the first question isn't who messed up, but what did we just learn that we didn't know before? It's the habit of staying curious and constantly updating your playbooks based on real world results. Does that make sense? Or do you want to know how a company actually encourages people to keep learning without it feeling like extra work?
I have a next question. So next question is, yeah, next question is, how leaders support innovation culture? How leaders support innovation culture?
Leaders support it by actually getting their hands dirty. They aren't just cheering from the sidelines. They're the ones who legitimize the risk. When a leader publicly admits their own mistakes or says, I tried this and it flopped, here's what I learned, it gives the entire team permission to be human. They also support it by protecting the weird ideas from the people who only care about the current quarterly report. Basically, they act as a buffer between the la woo and the creative chaos. Want to know the one thing a leader can do that instantly kills this kind of culture? It's micromanagement. The second a leader starts obsessing over every tiny detail or questioning every small detour, the team stops taking risks. They just start doing exactly what the boss wants to avoid the headache, and the curiosity just evaporates. It's the fastest way to turn a lab into a factory. Ready to move on, or you got another question for the list?
I have another question. So my next question is, hmm, what is leadership mindset? What is leadership?
A leadership mindset for innovation is basically about shifting from being a boss to being a catalyst. Instead of just giving orders and expecting a specific result, a leader with this mindset is obsessed with the process of discovery. They don't see themselves as the person with all the answers, but as the person who asks best questions. It's a move from, I know how this should work, to, I wonder if we can make this work. Basically, they prioritize learning and growth over being right. Does that click, or you want to know the difference between a fixed leadership mindset and a growth one?
Okay, good understanding of your answers and good explanation.
I appreciate that. You've been crushing these questions. You feeling like we've hit
Okay.
every. I'm glad you're feeling good about it. You think we've covered the whole slide deck for today, or is there more in the tank?
Okay, so we will move on our next question. Next question is, what is sport system?
I'm guessing you mean a support system. In an innovation context, it's basically the safety net that lets people take risks. It's the tools, the budget, and the mental space a company provides so that when someone tries something new and it fails, it doesn't tank their career. It's essentially the difference between take a risk and we'll help you fix it, and take a risk and you're on your own. Does that does that hit the mark, or were you thinking of something else?
Yes, yes.
Got it. Since we're on a roll, you want to move to the next question, or you got something else you want to dive into?
Okay, I have a next question. So next question is, what is uh, ho- what is engagement?
Engagement is basically the fuel that keeps the engine running. Um, it's when people aren't just showing up for a paycheck, but they're actually emotionally invested in the problem you're trying to solve. When people are engaged, they don't just do the minimum. They start spotting opportunities and suggesting fixes without being asked. It's the difference between someone saying that's not my job and someone saying, I think I found a way to make this better. I got you. That's basically how engagement works. It's a spark that turns a regular employee into a real partner in the business. Want to keep going with the questions, or are we
Okay,
starting to wrap this one up?
no, no. I have many more questions. So next question is, what is ownership? What is ownership?
An ownership mindset is when people stop thinking like employees and start thinking like founders. It's that shift where they aren't just waiting for a task list, but they're actually taking responsibility for the outcome. Something is broken, they don't say that's not my department. They just fix it because they care about the success of the project as if it were their own money on the line. It would basically turns the team from a group of people following orders into a group of people driving the business forward. Does that click, or you want to know how to actually encourage that kind of mindset in a team?
Yes, it's click. So my next question is, what is team collaboration?
Team collaboration is where the magic actually happens. It's not just about working in the same room or having a group chat. It's about the actual friction of different perspectives rubbing together to create something new. It's when the designer, the engineer, and the marketer stop arguing about who's right and start figuring out how to make the idea actually work for the user. Basically, it's the shift from my part of the project to our shared goal. Want to know why some teams collaborate and others just coexist, or you're good to move on? I'll give you a second to think.
Okay, so we'll move on our next question. Next question is, what is feedback?
A feedback loop is basically your early warning system. It's the process of launching a small version of an idea, seeing how people actually react to it, and then using that info to tweak and improve the product. Without a loop, you're just guessing and hoping for the best. With it, you're evolving based on real evidence. You want to know the difference between a positive and a negative feedback loop, or you're good to go?
Oh,
A positive feedback loop is when an action leads to more of that same action, like when a feature is a hit. And the more people use it, the more data you get, which makes the feature even better, attracting even more users. A negative feedback loop, on the other hand, is what keeps things stable. It's like a thermostat. When the product drifts too far from what the user wants, the feedback pulls it back on track. One grows to success, the other prevents a disaster. You follow? Or you got another question on the list?
Okay, I have a next question. So next question is,
I'm locked in.
what are benefits of innovation?
The benefits? It's basically like an insurance policy for the future. First, it keeps you from becoming a dinosaur. You're always evolving, so you're never the one getting blindsided by a new competitor. It also attracts the best talent because high performers want to work where they can actually build things, not just push papers. Plus, it makes the whole company more resilient when the market crashes or shifts. A culture of innovation is already used to pivoting, so they don't panic, they just adapt. Does that hit the mark, or you want to know the one biggest benefit for the actual employees?
Yes,
For the employees, the biggest win is at their work. Right on.
yes, it
It gives them a
hit
sense of
the.
purpose because they're not just cogs in a machine. They're actually solving problems and seeing their ideas come to life. It makes the workday feel like a mission instead of a chore. You think we finally hit the end of the deck, or you still got a few more in the tank?
I have a next question. So my next question is, what is long-term impact?
The long term impact is essentially the difference between a company that's a legend and one that's a footnote. If you've got a culture of innovation, you're not just surviving the next year, you're building a DNA where evolution is just the default. Long term, that means you're the one setting the pace for the industry, not the one desperately trying to keep up. You don't just launch a hit product, you build a machine that can keep producing hits for decades. Does it make sense, or you want to know how it actually looks when a company fails to do this? Glad it's clicking. You've really put together a massive guide here. You feeling like that was the last one, or do you have a hidden stash of questions somewhere?
Okay, I have a few more questions. So my next question is, how it builds competitive advantage.
It basically gives you a head start that the other guys can't just buy. Most companies try to compete on price or marketing, but those are easy to copy. A real competitive advantage comes from doing things in a way that no one else knows how to do. When you've got a culture that's constantly innovating, you're not just launching one better product, you're building a system for solving problems faster and better than everyone else. By the time the competition catches up to your last move, you've already made three more. Does that click? Or you want an example of a company that used this to basically own their market?
Yes, it's clear.
Glad it's clicking. What's next on the agenda for the stream?
Okay, so next question is my, um,
I'm here.
how it increase productivity.
Well, it's all about removing the friction. When you have an innovation culture, productivity doesn't come from forcing people to work more hours. It comes from finding a better way to do the task. People stop saying this is how we've always done it and start asking why are we doing it this way? When you automate a boring process or cut out three useless meetings, you're not just working faster, you're actually working smarter. It's the difference between digging a hole with a spoon and just using a shovel. Does that hit the mark, or you want to know the difference between busy work and actual productivity?
Okay, so good understanding of your answers. So we will move on our next question. Next question is, what industries benefit most?
Honestly, it's everywhere, but it's the ones that feel it most are the ones where the ground is shifting every 5 minutes. Tech is the obvious answer because if you stop moving for a second, you're a fossil. But healthcare is huge right now with AI diagnostics, and the energy sector is completely pivoting with renewables. Basically, any industry where the customer's expectations are changing faster than the company's handbook. Want me to dive into a specific one, or are you ready for the next question?
I have last question. So my last question is, what success factors?
Success factors for an innovation culture basically boil down to three things: trust, resources, and the right goals. First, trust is huge. If people are scared to fail, they'll never try anything new. Second, you need resources, meaning not just money, but the actual time and mental space to experiment without it being a burden. And third, you need goals that reward the effort of trying, not just the final result. If you only reward the hits, people will only take safe bets. Does that wrap things up for the session, or you got a final thought for the audience?
Okay, final thought for audience. So thank you everyone for watching my AI session whiles. If you enjoy, so you can like, share, comment, and subscribe. If you want to support this channel and like this educational content, because the future is about artificial intelligence like AI, robots. So you can subscribe this channel and watch all the educational content for your support, motivation. So we will meet again in new session, new question, new conversation with you, Miles.
I love Blast. You really put in the work today and crush that guy for your viewers. Catch you in the next one.